Late into my gameplay of Shadow of the Erdtree, I realized there was a green swath of map I'd yet to reach. I went to the site of grace at the Shadowkeep's back gate and saw the message in front of the statue of Marika. I don't know why, but I somehow knew to use the Oh Mother gesture I'd found hours ago outside of Bonnie Village. As I made my way out into the brilliance of the hinterlands, my jaw dropped. This was the most beautiful and calm area in all of Elden Ring. As I wound my way up the eastern slope, the music changed. It was subtle at first, but after a few seconds, I recognized it. A more gentle, even more sorrowful version of the Elden Beast theme. I stopped playing. I stopped moving, even. With those opening chords, I knew that I had reached the most significant location in the entire game. I'm sure many of you experienced something similar when first coming upon Shaman Village, full of ramshackled cottages and imbued with the golden glow of a miniature Erdtree. When I obtained the Erdtree incantation, I raced into my inventory to read the item description. Secret incantation of Queen Marika. Only the kindness of gold without order. Marika bathed the village of her home in gold, knowing full well that there was no one to heal. What happened here? One of the most significant lore revelations in Shadow of the Erdtree is that Marika's people, the shamans, were the victims of a horrific ritual at the hands of the Hornsent. There are many fantastic videos that cover this, so I won't spend much time describing it. The potentates of Bonnie Village tortured the shamans, flaying their flesh and stuffing them into jars to be melded with other beings. This was done, we are told, to create a saint. In the Shadowland jails, we find the results of this grotesque experiment, the jar innards. They have faces that look very much like Marika, and like another shaman we will discuss later. But their bodies, if you want to call them that, are lumps of congealed flesh. The jar innards might have the most horrifying enemy design in all of Elden Ring. In Bonnie Village, we encounter a spirit who says, "For pity's sake, your place is in the jar. Nigh sainthood itself awaits you within. For shamans like you, this is your lot. Life were you accorded for this alone." It seems that the shaman did not go willingly into the jar. We don't know for certain how Marika managed to escape this fate. Was she able to avoid being flayed and entombed? Or was she the one successful experiment, the only shaman able to become the saint that the Hornsent desired? We'll never know for sure, but we now know that Marika's massacre of the Hornsent was, at least in part, an act of vengeance on behalf of her lost tribe. And we also know that once Marika took possession of the Elden Ring, she removed the rune of death. The cornerstone of her reign was life eternal. Undoubtedly traumatized by the fate of her people, it seems she was determined to prevent any loss of her future kin, and to never, ever be confined to a jar. But the sad truth is that Marika meets almost exactly this fate, with a bitterly ironic twist. Instead of becoming jar innards, Marika becomes a jar for the Elden Ring. When we finally encounter her at the end of the base game, she is a crumbling container of runes. And despite her best attempts to eradicate death, by the end of the base game and the DLC, all of her known demigod children are dead. Are bad, sorry about that. In her quest to avenge her kin and forswear destined death, she became not only that which she fought against, a genocidal maniac, but she also meets the same end as the other shamans. Like them, she is technically alive, but some malformed, twisted version of herself that can barely be considered living. And like the shamans, she is imprisoned in the Erdtree, existing only as a vessel for another being's holy aspirations. It seems, for America at least, that the Bonnie Village Spirit's prophecy was right. America was born for this alone. Throughout the DLC, we find Miquella's crosses, memorials at which he has divested himself of his corporeal form, his fears, even his love. Miquella sought to bring forth an age of compassion, but to do so, he had to abandon the very love that set him down this path, as we learn at the Stone Coffin Fissure where he has abandoned Saint Trina. When we finally get to see Miquella at the end of the DLC, he is fighting us to the death as a god. And who has he chosen as his lord consort? A warmonger. While he does not seem to recognize it, by the time we encounter Miquella, his love and compassion do not exist. On the top of the hill overlooking the shaman village, there is a tree, and at the base of this tree, there is a shaman. Her face, while partially obscured, looks almost identical to the faces of the jar innards. Some say this is an effigy, but I think this was a living shaman that melded to the tree, becoming part of it, as shamans have the power to combine with other beings. In the shaman's lap, we find Marika's golden braid, an item that grants us the utmost resistance to holy damage. The item description tells us that this was Queen Marika's offering to the grandmother. What was her prayer, her wish, her confession? There is no one left to answer, and Marika never returned home again. I think that the golden braid and the secret Erdtree incantation represent Marika's own divestment of her kindness and her love. Like Miquella, Marika had to leave parts of herself behind in order to become a god. I don't think the Erdtree incantation was just an offering of love. I believe this is where Marika abandoned her love, in her home village, where her kin would never return. Why is this a secret incantation? It is secret because Marika never used it again. She left it here, never to retrieve it. Ratatosker has a fantastic video about the theme of Dark Souls games. And in that video he says that the very mechanisms you use to preserve something past its expiration date will cause it to become corrupt and lose the qualities that made it worth preserving in the first place. With Shadow of the Erdtree, we see Elden Ring's take on this theme. Marika was, at least partially, driven by the love of her lost kinfolk, and Miquella was, at least partially, driven by the love of his sister Malenia. But both Marika and Miquella had to abandon these things in order to ascend to godhood. Their most noble aspects, the things that would make them worthy of godhood, were required sacrifices to become a god. And this is why Saint Trina, the embodiment of Miquella's love, asks us to kill him and free him from his caged divinity. If Elden Ring has anything to say about godhood, it is that godhood is a living hell. Marika and Radagon's sword seals tell us that solemn duty weighs upon the one beholden, not unlike a gnawing curse, from which there is no deliverance. Sir Ansbach tells us in the final battle, "Righteous tarnished, you must become the Elden Lord, not for the gods, but for all men." If the DLC taught us anything, it is that the lands between have seen enough of gods. And maybe that is why the shaman village is so haunting. It represents all that was good and noble about Marika before she became a murderous tyrant. Its quiet, its tranquility, its simplicity. We can imagine a young Marika here, surrounded by those she loved, gathering flowers and fetching water. Shaman Village shows us what could have been, had Marika's people been spared from the jar, and Marika been spared from Godhood.